Oh my goodness, I am live. Amazing. It's just always so interesting that when you try something new, you have an actual fear around it. You're like, oh my God. Hi, Julio. I'm going to see you soon. I wanted to talk to you guys about pleasure in recovery from our addictions, recovery from behavioral addictions, recovery from big life events. How do we seek pleasure again when we fear pleasure in the first place? Because we almost feel like, okay, if I've been an addict, I associate pleasure to like this big, exciting dopamine hit, right? Hi. And then when we cut it off and we're like, okay, we're going to be in recovery now, we actually have a fear of pleasure. So I remember when I first got sober, I had a fear of how to reignite pleasure in my life. Like, how do I seek pleasure without it feeling dangerous? And hi, Tiva. And so I was like a little bit lost. I was like, does pleasure mean addiction? Like, does pleasure mean that I'm gonna like just basically get my dose meaning dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and what's the word? I'll find it. So basically, I was really, really scared that my chemical self was responsible for my pleasures. And it was. That's how I was seeking pleasure. Because I was coming from this trauma lens, I didn't know how to seek pleasure that was more wholesome and more full and more honorable, and that had a pleasure that had a good and healthy attachment to another person. You know, how could I seek pleasure without codependence, without the need to feel validated? How could I have my own autonomy in recovery and seek pleasure? Now, I'm not just talking about sexual pleasure or sensuality. I'm also talking about pleasure around food, around hobbies, around your old talents that are long forgotten talents that you've given up just because you were strung out in the addiction. Now, I'm not just talking about drug addiction, okay? Like, we are all in it in a way. All of us have a little bit of an addiction, I think, these days. You could be a lovely old lady in a long-time marriage and be an addict because you haven't left that man if it has given you pain. So codependency is a type of addiction. We struggle with social media. Like, are you on your phone way too much, right? That's an addiction. So we live in a world where we are distracted. And this distraction takes us away from the wholeness. So even if you're in recovery, you know, you might have little slips here and there behaviorally in the way that you attach to others. You know, are you an avoidant attachment partner or a addictive attachment partner? Or do you have healthy attachment where you feel autonomous in your own skin? So we can be very, very scared in recovery about seeking pleasure because it feels scary. Like, my recovery journey was that I was in rehab after being 6 months completely sober. I went into rehab sober as a priest, but completely mentally dislocated from life itself. I had no idea how to connect with myself, how to not come from a perspective of fear, and how I could love consciously myself and others. There is a word in Greek called agape, and that means love of the community, love of the world. I didn't know how to have universal love. I only knew how to love one aspect of my addiction. I only knew how to love the outer layers of myself, or kind of the superficiality of who I was, which came through forms of narcissism. I didn't know how to wholesomely attach myself consciously with another person that felt safe and fearless. The reason why a lot of people, thank you, have a lovely day too. The reason why a lot of people have fears around pleasure in recovery is because they just don't really know how to wholesomely attach pleasure to oneself. So pleasure in recovery, again, as I said, is not about a chemical cocktail. It's really about more of seeking peace and prosperity in other elements in your life. So it could be as simple as stroking a cat, sitting with a cup of coffee, reaching out, helping a friend. There are very simple ways that we can reach out and be of service to ourselves and others. And so pleasure really is, this is where I kind of researched a lot of the tantric ways of pleasure. And you know, a lot of it in Tantra is not about sex. Tantra is really just all about seeking pleasure in the experience of life, whether it is through breathing, whether it is through touching your own skin, whether it is through observing a child's laughter. It can be those little elements that can really, really get you back into a place of wholesomeness. And so if you are really scared of pleasure in recovery, you're not the only one, because you have to basically relearn how to connect to yourself through your talents and through long forgotten characteristics that you lost as a child. And then you have to kind of find it on your own without the assistance of others outside attention or validation. So how can you seek pleasure within yourself? Again, it's not just through like touching yourself. It's like also like, how do I eat a meal and enjoy eating a piece of lettuce? So it's all of those things, right? So yes, I will be doing more lives, and I will be talking more about codependency, addiction, and basically how to venture our lives these days being in a place of growth and in a place of peace and in a place of actually doing the internal work. My name is Natalie Kashani. I am a trauma and neuroscience-based recovery coach, and I help women dealing with codependency and addiction recovery. And basically we talk a lot about cognition, neuroscience, Eastern, Western philosophies, and through finding your own you, basically, through abstract ways that I have in my toolbox, all the things that made me heal my addiction and feeling more peaceful. So yes, I'm getting ready for a podcast with my friend Julio. I actually thought it was yesterday, totally messed up with LA, Bali time, but we're doing it now. And I'm really excited. It's going to be hosted in 2 weeks. My friend Julio has a podcast on Spotify. He's going to be interviewing me about my own transformation. And his podcast, I love the name of it, is called This Is Only a Test. And isn't it so that life is just a bloody test? We live in this finite world where we have to basically seek pleasure and experience in today's world. Like, this is your time to shine. All right. So anyways, I'm really, really excited for the podcast, which will be coming out in 2 weeks. And I also have my group program for women coming up in November. So if you are interested at all in joining a small group of women recover through the perspective of neuroscience, please hit me up. You can join me at www.nataliekashani.com, or you can go to my Facebook site, or you can just start a conversation. You can WhatsApp me, you can DM me, all of those beautiful things. And I really, really hope that you can seek pleasure in recovery, because you are fucking worth it. Can I swear on here? Yes, I sure can. All right. Take care, guys. I hope you have a lovely day.